morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Sir Meerkat, and welcome back to the Moto Meerkat channel. So I was originally researching for a video about Caterham F1 for this week, but that's kind of taken a backseat and it's probably going to be coming out next week. Instead, I managed to fall down a sort of Lotus rabbit hole as such. I was just researching more and more around the topic, and I found out that the story of their name in F1 is fascinating, with lawsuits, payoffs, and arguments galore. And even having two teams at one point running under the same name on the same circuit. What? So without further ado, let's have a look at what the impact has been of Lotus on Formula 1 since its creation in 1952. And make sure to strap those seatbelts up because it's going to be a bumpy ride. A fine gentleman called Colin Chapman established Lotus Engineering Limited in 1952, and Team Lotus split from Lotus Engineering in 1954. Team Lotus obviously being the racing side of the Lotus manufacturing. When Formula 2 was created in 1957, Lotus put forward a few cars, mainly the Lotus 11, before in 1958 they first started racing in Formula 1. They ran two Lotus 12s at Monaco in 1958 for Graham Hill and Cliff Allison. These were then replaced by Lotus 16s later in the year before moving to Lotus 18s in 1960. And this is where the Lotus team would begin their domination with their first victory in 1961 at the US Grand Prix at Watkins Glen, I do believe. Big old Inns, Ireland winning that one. And in 1963 and 1965, Jim Clark obviously winning the World Drivers and World Constructors Championship for Lotus. A driver who is considered to be one of the best of all time, and really sad that he was just taken from this world too early. And Team Lotus was certainly a heavy hitter in Formula 1 in those times, being the first team to reach 50 victories. And the racing team even continued after Colin Chapman's death, but fairly unsuccessfully. As we all know, Ayrton Senna drove for the team between 1985 and 1987. He managed to get 8 poles and 2 wins in 1986 in the legendary 98T, which has that beautiful John Player special livery. But that was really the high point of Lotus after Chapman's death. Since then, since Senna moved on to bigger and better things, the team started to slowly decline. And they were continued deteriorating in form until they went into administration in 1994 due to the mounting debts on the team, and the assets actually merged with a team called Pacific Racing before they eventually collapsed in 1995. And we wouldn't actually see the Lotus name re-enter Formula 1 until 2010. This was because a lower level team called Lightspeed acquired the right to submit an entry under the Lotus name. Lotus Cars, the actual people that manufactured Lotus cars, they actually made doubly sure that they distanced themselves from this Lotus Formula 1 project that was going on. And when the actual manufacturer that you're using the name from says, boys, we don't have anything to do with this, it's probably not the best look on the team, is it? And Lotus Cars even went as far as saying that they would be willing to take action to protect their name and brand and reputation if they needed to in the future. God, they really thought that team was going to go down the shitter. But luckily for Lotus Cars, I guess, Lightspeed were not successful in their bid, but it emerged in September of 2009 that the Malaysian government backed an entry for the 2010 championship under the Lotus name, but a separate entity completely. This was led by Malaysian businessman Tony Fernandez, who already actually sponsored Williams at the time with his Air Asia brand. And the Malaysian government wanted to get involved to promote the Malaysian company Proton, who actually owned the Lotus Cars sort of group. So that's probably why they distanced themselves quite far from the Lightspeed project, because they already had this one going on. They were like, that's not us, we're going to be the good one soon, we promise. Tony Fernandez and the team's bid was indeed successful, and they ran as Lotus Racing in the 2010 Formula 1 World Championship. But on the official documentation and everything, the team was actually called One Malaysia F1 Team, not very British. Fernandez, the sort of leader of the whole thing, became the team principal while it was all getting set up and said that he would step down, but he never did. The team was originally based at Racing Technology Norfolk, around 10 miles from the Lotus car factory, and the team decided on Jarno Trulli and Heikki Kovalainen as their drivers for the 2010 season. And to be fair, they did very well considering. I mean, they got 0 points, but they managed to beat the other 2 newcomers of the year, HRT and Virgin Racing. I know what you're going to say, but they got 0 points. How do they beat them? Just for like the average of positions and things like that, they did better and they were classified higher in the standings. And Fernandez actually had a bet on with big old Mr. Richard Branson, the owner and runner of Virgin and subsequently the Virgin Formula 1 team. So the bet that these two had agreed was the losing principal. So the principal on the team that lost would have to do 1 flight working as an air hostess on the other team boss's flight. So Branson obviously lost, and to be fair, he upheld his side of the deal. He went on an AirAsia flight, all dressed up in lovely air hostess gear, and that's where we get some of these lovely photos that I'm showing you on screen right now. If that hasn't put you off your dinner, I'm not sure what's going to. In September 2010, Group Lotus, obviously owned by Proton in Malaysia, terminated the license of the Lotus name for future seasons for the Formula 1 team. And they claimed that this was as a result of flagrant and persistent breaches of the license by the team. But on September the 24th, Tony Fernandez fought back, and he fought back hard. He bought Team Lotus Ventures, the company that was left over when Team Lotus stopped competing in Formula 1 in 1994. It was owned by David Hunt at the time, but obviously he sold it all to Mr. Fernandez. This sale of the team gave full ownership of the rights of Team Lotus, the branding and the heritage of the team to Fernandez. And for the 2011 season, their team name changed from Lotus Racing to Team Lotus. Lotus Cars fired back. They launched legal action against Lotus Racing, claiming that Tony Fernandez did not have the rights to use the Lotus name because David Hunt was never in a position to sell them in the first place. And would you have it, Lotus Cars had recently joined forces with ART in Formula 2, looking likely that they would want to branch out into Formula 1 at some point in the future, and definitely did not want Fernandez there, blocking them in with his use of the Lotus name. But Fernandez said he was happy to go to court if necessary to protect the brand and the name of his team, and this began a serious timeline of dispute. On the 5th of November 2010, Team Lotus agreed a deal with Renault to use their engines for the 2011 season. The team also announced that they would be running a black and gold livery, very similar to the JPS one used in the 1980s during the Chapman era. On the 8th of December 2010, Group Lotus bought a stake in Renault F1, agreeing to become their title sponsor. This new team will be known as Lotus Renault GP for the 2011 season, and guess what? They'd be running a black and gold livery reminiscent of the John Player Special livery from the 1980s, completely paralleling the plans of Fernandez. Salty! On the 11th of December 2010, Fernandez stated it's completely ludicrous to run his squad in the same colours as the Lotus Renault GP, and would thus continue using the green and yellow scheme that they used the previous year. And thank God he decided on that, because that would have mean that not only were they running the same name, they would have had the same bloody livery. You wouldn't be able to tell them apart. On the 23rd of December 2010, Clive Chapman, the son of Lotus founder Colin Chapman, released a statement on behalf of himself and his family expressing unequivocal support for Group Lotus on the ongoing dispute between the two teams, and he was basically saying that they would prefer that the Team Lotus name was not used in Formula 1. They'd rather have Lotus Renault have the Lotus name. And on the 24th of January, the next year in 2011, a High Court judge in London set the trial date for the dispute on the 21st of March. And here's the big caveat. Fernandez might have been a little bit more up for giving away the branding of Lotus if it wasn't for the fact that because he finished 10th in the constructors last year, his team was owed by the FAA, the big payers of the big money, $36 million for finishing in that position. If they change the name of the team before the 2011 season starts, they don't get any of that money. And we move on to, finally, the 27th of May, 2011 court day. They had their hearing, the big hoo-has, everyone gave their points of view, sides of the argument, and the High Court ruled that Team Lotus could continue using their name and the Lotus roundel so the little badge that they have, but could not use the word Lotus on its own. Fernandez legally owned the Team Lotus name, but Group Lotus had the right to use the sole word Lotus and the JPS style livery. So really, it didn't do that much except confirm that Fernandez could indeed use the name and thus collect his big amount of winnings. However, Team Lotus was ordered to pay damages to Group Lotus for competing under the Lotus Racing name during the 2010 season because, of course, they're not allowed to use the singular word. But once that was all cleared up, they could go back to racing in Formula 1 for the 2011 season, with Team Lotus picking Trulli and Kovalainen to race for them again. They continue with their sort of mediocre performances in 2011, now sort of in a bit of a no man's land because they definitely gotten better and they were well out of the clutches of Virgin and HRT, but they still weren't quite on the back of the midfield teams of, say, Toro Rosso and Williams. And at the end of the 2011 season, Lotus Renault GP changed their name to just Lotus F1 because obviously they had the ruling to be allowed to use the singular word. But in a change of events, Fernandez had purchased Caterham cars sort of midway through the season on the 27th of April 2011, creating the Caterham Group. And that would mean for the 2012 season, Fernandez would change the name of his Formula 1 team from Team Lotus to Caterham F1. And the Caterham story, as I was saying earlier, is just great. I was really thinking about doing it for today, but I got so deep in this rabbit hole, and I hope you're enjoying this rabbit hole as well. I will be covering Caterham and the abandonment of their Formula 1 factory in next week's video, so make sure you subscribe down below so that you don't miss out on that. The Lotus F1 team would compete in Formula 1 from 2012 to 2015, back to just one Lotus team being in the championship, thank God, much less confusing. Raikkonen and Grosjean would race for the team in 2012, finishing 3rd and 8th in the championship respectively, with Kimi achieving 7 podiums during the year, one of which being a win in Abu Dhabi. And to be fair to Grosjean, he'd get 2 podiums as well, obviously that Lotus car being pretty good that year, and more famously for Grosjean that year, being involved in that monster crash at the first corner at Spa-Francorchamps.
Hey bitch, what's up bitch? Suck my dick.
Despite that crash, the pair stayed at Lotus for 2013, with Raikkonen taking the win at the opening round in Australia, despite starting 7th. And Lotus would achieve similar success to the previous year, finishing 4th in the standings again. And 2014 saw Lotus produce their interesting but Jesus Christ, it's ugly, twin tusk design for the front wing, thanks to the regulation changes for that year. And this horrendously ugly nose would be sort of the start of their downfall as such. They lost Kimi Raikkonen, he went to Ferrari for 2014, so that meant the GOAT, Pastor Maldonado, joined Grosjean at the team. What a pairing! And 2015 wouldn't be much better for the outfit. They kept the 2 drivers, Maldonado and Grosjean, so I guess you're kind of nailing in the last one of your coffin yourself. And they actually ended their partnership with Renault for this year, switching to Mercedes engines. And to be fair to Grosjean, I have got to highlight it, he redeemed himself from 2012, coming back to Silverstone in 2015 and getting a 3rd place. But midway into the season, the team owners began talks with Renault to actually sell on the team. This was because Lotus were falling into a lot of debt, and it meant they had crazy things happen, like at the Japanese Grand Prix. They were locked out of their hospitality because they hadn't paid the bills to the hospitality for the previous year, which is just so unbelievably unprofessional. And luckily for Lotus, Renault did end up bailing them out because they were starting to fall behind on income tax and insurance payments to the British government. That's not something you can just get shut out from, that's where you can really get killed. And Renault announced on the 21st of December 2015 that they had indeed purchased the Lotus F1 team. And from that day, we've not seen the Lotus name in Formula 1 at all. So we've gone from 2 teams being called Lotus to 1 to none for now. Well, there we have it. That is the curious case of Lotus in Formula 1. I think we can pretty safely say that the debacles involved with the Lotus branding is one of the weirdest occurrences in the sport's history. But would you like to see Lotus re-enter the sport as a brand? Again, be sure to let me know down in the comments below. Be sure to drop a like down below if you did enjoy the video. I do really appreciate that. And obviously, again, subscribe to the Moto Meerkat channel because you're not going to want to miss that catering video coming at you next Friday. But again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see all of you Meerkats later. Goodbye, guys.